Hello, anatomy colleagues. My name is Dr. Kathleen Alsop, and I am super excited to be discussing the musculoskeletal system with you. And I am particularly lucky that I get to start my discussions with you with one of my all-time favorite subjects in anatomy, and that is the skeletal system. Now, within this block, this musculoskeletal block, we will discuss a multitude of things related to this skeletal system. Things including bone growth, how they actually grow, bone cells and composition, how to actually identify the different types of bones. But we're going to start with the most basic and foundational, and that's what actually makes up the skeletal system. And spoiler alert, it's more than just bone. For each mini lecture, I will have a list of learning objectives that you should be able to answer from the information that we discuss throughout. So it's not just the stuff that's written on the slides. I need you to pay attention to the spoken content as well. And when you combine all of this together, this should allow you to comprehensively answer these learning objectives. And there will be no one-word answers here. You generally need to put a little bit more thought into it. And I highly recommend writing down the answers in your own words. The act of doing this is so much more powerful and will get you further than just trying to memorize or write down everything I say. My last suggestion here is to do this right after you watch. Don't wait until the day before the final. Many of these concepts we discuss will build off of each other, so you need to stay on top of these, and you're going to be super successful in this course. Okay. So, when you think of the skeletal system, I'm sure your first thought is bone, which is great. I'm glad we're all on the same page there because it is the major component when we're talking about the skeletal system. And the first concept I want to focus on is that bone is a dynamic organ. This means that it's not static. It does change throughout your life. And some of us think as we reach adulthood and your bones stop growing in length, bones are just done changing, but that's not true. While it is more drastic in terms of the change and noticeable that occurs during embryonic development and childhood, bone can certainly change in width as well as composition throughout life. And this happens through natural bone remodeling as a natural response and adaptation to stress. And stress is not necessarily a bad thing here. Bone density can increase or decrease based on things like disease. It could change because of weight-bearing exercise. In fact, our body replaces about 10% of bone each year in healthy, active adults. So bone change is normal, it is necessary. However, as we will discuss later, there can certainly be pathological changes. All right, so let's move into the meat of the discussion in this video, which is what the skeletal system is actually composed of. And as you might imagine, osseous or bone tissue is hugely important. Osseous tissue is the major component of bone, which is the major part of the skeletal system. And we will spend time reviewing the specifics of the composition of osseous tissue in an upcoming video, but I do want to cover a few foundational things here. Okay, so osseous tissue is a mineralized connective tissue. It is one of the 5 major types of mature connective tissues. And do you recall what makes connective tissue unique to other tissues in composition? Well, there are a few things, but connective tissues will have a large amount of extracellular matrix and widely dispersed cells. So these little black dots throughout here are cells, and everything else there is extracellular matrix. So how the extracellular matrix is organized will vary between the different types of connective tissue. And so osseous tissue is unique in that the extracellular matrix is calcified or mineralized, which means it is hardened. The extracellular matrix is going to be composed of organic as well as inorganic materials, and both are equally important in maintenance and function of the bone. The organic component is mostly collagen fibers, which is composed of the protein collagen. So this is a very strong strong fibers. It will resist pulling forces, so important in tensile strength, which we'll talk about a bit more in a moment. But collagen is not too stiff. It will allow some flexibility of the bone, which is really important in terms of helping to prevent brittleness. There are other non-collagen proteins, but we're not really going to get into those details here. So knowing collagen is where I want you to be at. The inorganic portion of the extracellular matrix is composed of mineral salts, which will be the things that confer hardness and much of the rigidity of the bone. Now, I want to take a terminology break here and discuss the three types of forces or types of strengths that will come up throughout our musculoskeletal discussions. So this is not only important in terms of bone, but also cartilage, ligaments, tendons, and the connective tissues that surround muscle. Tensile strength is the big one. This is the most important one. It is going to be the maximum strength that a structure can withstand while being stretched or pulled. And this is hugely important in the musculoskeletal system, and it's the main one we're going to discuss. It's particularly important due to the tendon attachments pulling on bone. So you just have that natural pulling that occurs. Tensile strength is generally due to those collagen fibers we were just discussing. And that collagen is not just located in bone, it's going to be located in other structures. Compression strength is the strength a structure can withstand while being crushed or compressed. So kind of the opposite of tensile strength. This is primarily imparted through the inorganic components of the bone. And lastly, shearing strength is what a structure can withstand while being pushed in opposite directions. So different parts of the bone are being pushed in different directions. And the fact that a bone is a composite with both organic and inorganic materials allows for a balance of these different strengths and forces. All right, cartilage, a sneaky favorite of mine as well. It's going to be hugely important in the musculoskeletal system. It's up there in importance with bones and muscles. Cartilage, like bone, is one of the major types of mature connective tissues, and there are three major ways that cartilage is associated with the skeletal system. The first is going to be bone ossification or bone formation. And most of the bones of the body are formed within and actually replace a cartilage model. And specifically, this type of ossification is called endochondral ossification. You can see the basic steps here on the right in this illustration, and we'll actually discuss these in more detail in an upcoming video. The second major way is through forming joints, specifically cartilaginous joints. So cartilage will actually be the type of tissue that will connect the bones to one another. The third way is that cartilage is going to cover the ends of long bones. And this type of cartilage is called articular cartilage. And this occurs in synovial joints, which are most of the joints of the body. So joints like the shoulder or the hip, those are examples of synovial joints. And this articular cartilage is actually a remnant of that endochondral ossification process. Most cartilage associated with the skeletal system is hyaline cartilage, which is also the most abundant cartilage in the body. Now, one more thing to note before we move away from cartilage is that it is mostly avascular, meaning it has little to no blood supply. And this is a major reason cartilage is slow to heal when damaged. Another type of connective tissue, dense connective tissue, also is on the lower end in terms of vascular supply. This is going to play a role in certain structures that are associated with the skeletal system. The first is going to be the periosteum, which is mostly composed of dense, irregular connective tissue, and it will surround the external surface of bone. And it's going to be tethered to the bone via thick collagen fibers. Ligaments and tendons typically have an attachment to bone. So both are going to be usually composed of dense, regular connective tissue. So collagen fibers are more regularly arranged in bundles when we're talking about dense, regular. Ligaments are going to attach bone to bone, as you can see here with this anterior cruciate ligament. Tendons will connect muscle to bone, as you can see here with this tendon of the quadriceps femoris. Marrow is a soft, pulpy-like connective tissue. It's going to be found in hollow spaces of the bone, and there are two major types, and the amount of each differs depending on many things, such as age, the type of bone we're talking about, the location in bones, and other factors. Red bone marrow is found throughout the skeleton in the fetus and during the first year of life, meaning all bone marrow during that age range is red bone marrow. Now, what is of particular importance about red bone marrow is that it is a hemopoietic tissue, meaning that it is a blood-forming tissue, specifically the formed elements of blood. Now, you're going to have a whole lecture on blood later on in this course, so I don't want to take away from that fun of specifics related to blood, so just know that that's going to come up later. Now, in childhood, much of the red bone marrow is gradually replaced by yellow bone marrow, which is not blood forming, importantly. But I do want to note that red bone marrow does persist in certain bones into adulthood. A few examples are vertebrae, the sternum, ribs, hip bones, and proximal ends of the humerus as well as the femur. And you can actually see a head of the femur here showing the different types of bone marrow, and you very much see red bone marrow there. Now, yellow bone marrow is a network of connective tissue that supports numerous cells, but most of these cells are going to be adipocytes, which are important for triglyceride storage, which can be used as an energy reserve. Yellow bone marrow is particularly prominent in hollow marrow or medullary cavities, which are located in the middle of the shafts of long bones. Finally, it is important to note that bone has a rich neurovascular supply. Neurovasculature is another concept that will be prominent throughout the entirety of the course. You're actually going to have a whole neuroanatomy block, so you're going to be talking about nerves a lot there. Another block will have a large focus on arteries and veins. And the reason for so much focus here is because these structures are so prominent and so numerous and found throughout the body. But if you're unfamiliar with these terms, I do want to at least introduce them. Arteries are going to be blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart to different tissues. And typically, but not always, as you will discuss during the cardiorespiratory block, arteries tend to carry oxygen-rich blood. But there are some very important exceptions that you'll talk about later. Veins are the blood vessels that convey blood back to the heart, and often this blood is deoxygenated. So arteries and veins make up the vasculature part of neurovasculature. And the neuro part will be nerves. And nerves are bundles of axons that are grouped together outside of the central nervous system. And these structures tend to travel together in what's called neurovascular bundles. All right. I like to end all of my mini lectures with a question to allow yourself to test your knowledge on some of the concepts we discussed in this section. I always recommend that you try to answer these on your own first, then you can tune back in as I discuss with you the correct and the incorrect answers. But these are practice questions, so use them. Try to answer these on your own. So try your hand at this question. Which component of the skeletal system is important in hemopoiesis? So pause the video if needed. And when you are ready for discussion, I hope that you have landed on D, red bone marrow, as being the correct answer. It is the only answer choice here that is a blood-forming tissue. That's why it's correct. I did have arteries here as a distractor to be just a little tricky. Arteries are definitely very important in transporting blood, but it is not in arteries that blood is formed. So this isn't correct. Hyaline cartilage is definitely not correct either. In fact, hyaline cartilage is mostly avascular, so not as important. Osseous tissue itself is not blood forming, even though red bone marrow is stored in spaces between bone. And yellow bone marrow, again, it's not blood forming either, so not correct. So all signs are pointing towards red bone marrow as being the correct answer. All right, most excellent. Thank you so much for your attention here, and please do reach out with any additional questions.